Everybody, welcome to Soul Focus Radio. This is a very special series that we are embarking upon called A New Mind. And in A New Mind, what we are seeking to do is to really interview spiritual thought leaders and understand their teachings, their philosophy, and how the work that they have brought to the world can help us expand our consciousness, our awareness of ourselves, and most importantly, how we can love ourselves more and begin to love each other in this world more. As we can see, we're in a world desperately in need of love. And we are so excited that today we have Jim McCarty with us, who is one of the creators of the Law of One, and who is very instrumental in bringing the Law of One work and the raw material work to our consciousness. And so, Jim, we want to just welcome you. How are you this morning?
Doing very well. I'm honored to be on your show. I think this is a great chance for us to expand understanding of humanity's purpose here on Earth.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Jim, our organization, the Soul Focus Group, we have been involved with a lot of social justice work over the past 25 years, specifically working around systemic and structural racism. And one of the things that we came to understand, we were bringing good analysis to the world, but the truth is within the social justice community, there was a lot of struggle, turmoil, conflict, and pain. And we came to the conclusion that we had to do a marriage of social consciousness with spiritual consciousness, fundamentally our relationship with ourselves and how we relate to each other. And, in that spirit, we want to just jump into the conversation, Martin.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you again so much for joining us. I echo everything that Dustin said. And before we, get into questioning on the Law of One and the raw material, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what is your background? And specifically, like, what kind of belief systems were you raised with?
Well, as a kid, I was raised in the Presbyterian Church, and it really didn't have much effect on me. Before I really had any spiritual feelings or thoughts, I just had to, I guess, go through high school and most of the way through college. And then I joined the hippie revolution and the whole idea of make love, not war. And after that, I got into teacher corps so that I could, I didn't want to pursue my business and economics majors because I just didn't want to have money making be my life. So I joined Teacher Corps and ended up in Jacksonville, Florida, working in inner city schools, try to help the kids there have a better education because they were low income area. And they just didn't have, the salary for the teachers and the facilities for a good educational system. So we tried our best there for a couple of years, and I worked with the kids and worked with John Holt's idea of the inner classroom and trying to individualize the study for the kids to make it something that they could get into and really feel a part of. And after that, I went to what was called the Adventure Trail Survival School in Blackhawk, Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and learned a process called brain self-control, where you use dreams and journaling to try to figure out what in your life has programmed you to be the way you are and what could remove some blockages or programmings that were not pro-life. And the idea was to circuit your consciousness into your third eye, or the indigo or energy center. And it worked for me. And so after that, I decided to try to get my own school going in the woods of central Kentucky. So for 6 years, I lived in the woods and built my own log cabin, was off the grid, and joined a lot of it was the back to the land movement at that time. College educated hippies were coming back to the land to follow Thoreau's idea of simplify. So they built their own houses, homeschooled their kids, and grew their own food. And we had a group that would go around to everybody's house at one point or another during on Wednesdays to do whatever they had to do, plant a garden, paint a house, build a fence, whatever. And then one evening I was on my battery powered radio and I heard Don and Carla talking on WKQQ radio in Lexington, Kentucky. They were talking about UFOs, but not about the craft or anything except the philosophy that the one infinite creator had made everything, everyone, as a means by which to know itself better, and given us all what you might call a spiritual journey. And when I heard that, it took me about 6 months, but I was fortunate to meet Don and Carla when we were having our co-op was ordering food that we couldn't grow ourselves. And I was talking to some folks from the other side of the same county I lived in about the interview I heard of Don and Carla. They said, well, we're members of their meditation group. We'll introduce you. So that's how I met Don and Carla. And 3 weeks after I joined them, I went up there for a year, drove back and forth between Louisville and where I was in central Kentucky, and was a part of their meditation group. And then they invited me to join them. And when I finally joined them, then the Raw Contact started 3 weeks later.
Wow. Thank you so much for that background. It's so much in alignment with what we talk about, because we talk so much about our consciousness and how we've been programmed and all the different ways that we know things. So it's so much in alignment, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So Jim, many of our viewers potentially have not heard of the Law of One. So if you could, and I know it's a lot, I mean, my question is going to be pretty huge, but if you could give an overview of the Law of One. I mean, fundamentally, if you were talking to someone for the first time, you have 5 minutes to explain the raw material and the Law of One, how would you explain it?
Well, it's part of what you would call a perennial philosophy. All the major religions of the world have some facets of this perennial philosophy in the mystical traditions of Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, all have a mystical aspect. And this perennial philosophy sees that everything and everyone is part of the one infinite creator. We're all children of the one creator. Right. And we're here in this third density illusion in a very special situation. We have what's called the veil of forgetting between our conscious and unconscious minds that keeps us from seeing the unity of all creation and all people. And that veil of forgetting gives us a chance to find for ourselves how this is true and how it can impact our lives if we are able to see that we are all part of one being that is here to learn more about itself and to give us a chance to learn about the creator or God or spirit or whatever you want to call that force. So it's a way of everyone getting to know who they really are and that we are all one. It doesn't matter anything else about, where your background, your religion, the color of your skin, your thoughts, anything. All of that is food for learning, grist for the mill. And if we can engage in a spiritual journey and begin to seek the truth of our being, all one being, then we can make a choice. And the choice is to be of service to others and to move out of this third density illusion. If we can make that choice in 51% of our thoughts and words and actions to love others with unconditional love, then we can graduate to the fourth density of love and understanding and continue that spiritual journey, then without that veil of forgetting.
That's a beautiful definition. And so it brings up a lot of questions, Jim. So when you talk about the third density, there's a lot of conversation between density and dimensions. Can you explain in some detail what we are here for within this third density, what a density is, and maybe help our listeners understand just the whole concept of density? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the transition from the third to fourth.
Well, density and dimension are two terms that Ra uses interchangeably. The density aspect is how dense each level of experience is in light, because there's an octave of densities, 1 through 8. And the progression of consciousness through that is something that we're involved in here in the third density. We have a mind, we have a body, and a spirit. In the previous densities, 1 and 2, there was just the mind in the first density of earth, wind, fire, and water. Second density are animals and plants. They have bodies. They can become inspirited and become third density entities, which we are complete entities. We have a mind, a body, and a spirit. And what we're supposed to be doing here, we hope are doing here, is to further our evolution, our spiritual evolution, into the realization and experience of the one infinite creator. And what we have to do here is to use the catalyst that comes our way every day. Catalyst can be something where you have a disagreement with somebody, you have a misunderstanding, you have confusion, all the various problems that develop between people in our world today, in every country of the world, are what can be used consciously, if you're a conscious seeker of truth, to grow, to establish communication, to resolve the problems. But if you don't do that, then you're not using the food for growth. And that's where, unfortunately, it seems like so many people are today. But conscious spiritual seekers of truth have that idea, and they know that is the reason we're here. As Baba Ram Dass said, it's all grist for the mill. It's food for learning. So if we just use what we know and feel in our interactions with others, then we can use that catalyst and grow more and more into unity, into harmony.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jim. A couple things come up for me. You mentioned the veil of forgetting. What's the purpose of the veil of forgetting? And because it feels like that's something I always think about a lot when I listen to you talk and listen to other people talk, is, what is the purpose of us forgetting? Because it feels like we've forgotten too much almost, that we've forgotten that this is a catalyst for growth and change. And instead we think that this is everything. And so then we're divided and we're going at each other in this third density realm. So if you could talk a little bit more about that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, at the very beginning of creation, the first third density entities did not have the veil of forgetting. They saw that everybody was the creator. Nobody was more the creator than anybody else. Everyone was equal. So there was no reason to make any effort to grow, to change, to learn, to progress beyond the fourth density. They knew that that was the reason that they were there, was to make progress, to make it to the fourth density, but they couldn't do it because there wasn't any love great enough or fear great enough to cause them to change the position in their own life patterns. So after they had to repeat the third density time and time again. They were not able to graduate. They couldn't polarize their consciousness, is basically the thing. There wasn't any polarity between their positive and negative. There was just all positive. So the logo at that time, the logos is an entity such as the creator of our major galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, would be a logos. So the way the creator worked was to give the power of love and light to the logos, to make choices so that the creation could be changed in some fashion if necessary. So they discovered that if they put this veil of forgetting between the conscious and subconscious minds, that there was still deep within the heart of each entity that knowledge of oneness and of unity, but the veil kept it from being obvious to the conscious mind. So the conscious mind needed to partake in some sort of a spiritual journey at some point in order to begin to allow this subconscious feeling of unity with all begin to take shape in the life pattern. And once that happened, then the possibility of positive polarity and negative polarity both came into being. And that allowed the positive entities to be able to see more of the purpose of their life and to be able to polarize their consciousness in a positive sense of service to others. Now, it also brought in the concept of service to self. These selfish entities, the entities that wanted to separate themselves from others and to control them, that gave them the chance to be that, to be negative. So the positively oriented entities needed to be 51% positive, just enough to point the needle of the compass in order to make the harvest or the graduation into the fourth density. The negative entities, however, travel the path of what Ross said, the path of that which is not. In other words, separation and control. However, Ra also said that the creator blinked neither at the light nor the darkness, because the whole purpose for the creation is to find a way for the creator to know itself through every free will action of both positive and negative entities. So the negative entities had to be 95% accurate or able to separate and control other people. So this continues throughout the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth densities. So there's both the positive and negative polarities, just like your car battery runs if the positive and negative poles have a difference between them. If there's no difference, you can't start your car. So now the car is running. It's got both a positive car and a negative car. But by the time they get into the sixth density, however, they have to blend the fourth density love and the fifth density wisdom and see everyone as the creator. Now, that's not hard for positive polarity because that's the path of that which is. It's hard enough for the negative polarity that they have to switch their polarity. They have to become positive because they also want to become one with the creator. So they switch their polarity and their power, as Ross said, is the same. So they don't have to go back and start over. They can use the power they've gained of separation, switch their polarity and become positive. And then by the middle of the sixth density, the concept of polarity is no longer necessary to use as a tool for evolution. And progress from that point on does not partake in polarity, but it is a useful tool up to that point.
So Jim, as you say that, I know for me, as I studied the law of one, it was really hard for me to understand based on how I was socialized, growing up as a Christian and just in this world of dichotomy, either or dualism, that the creator sees no fundamental difference between the positive path or the negative path. But even as we call them positive and negative, just our conditioning has been to, so can you just speak about that a little bit more?
Yeah. Yes, it's a concept that is difficult to really see the overview for because the way that negative polarity manifests itself in the third density illusion is usually very traumatic. The separation and control, the warlike behavior, the people who seek power to use it over others and to control them is something that is very hard to deal with in the third density. But it is also a way for the creator to know itself. All of these free will choices give the creator this full view of both the positive and negative and informs itself of how it is learning from those choices. And both positive and negative entities can also learn from those choices to progress on their journeys. And their journeys in third density and for the negative, fourth, fifth, and into the sixth reflect those choices. And each has a chance to grow in a spiritual sense in that way. In the third density, we have to deal with that in a number of ways. For most people, the negatively oriented entities are not ones with which they are intimately familiar. The negative entities seem to operate from behind the scenes in their controlling and separating from others. Ross suggested if you simply look at the people who have this desire for the use of power and that use it for their own uses, then you can get an idea of who they might be. They would not name anybody. They left that to us. So in the third density, many people cannot really fathom how negative entities could be helpful because they are so engaged in the separation and control. But, excuse me, there is always the possibility that the positively oriented entities can make their own spiritual journeys in a way that is not affected by the negative polarity if they use a spiritual path and they choose whatever path of service to others is most in synchrony with their heart, what you've come to do. Most people of a positive nature, all of us make pre-incarnative choices when we come here. And we can make a choice as to how we want to be of service to others so that our path can develop along the way in a way that is in congruence with that pre-incarnative choice. Because our subconscious mind, knowing that we are all one, biases the way we see our catalyst in a way that gives us a chance to move along our spiritual journey. If we take advantage of those coincidences and synchronicities that come in everybody's way, in everybody's path. So you can travel your positive path, even though there are negative entities in the world, and you can make your own spiritual journey of being of service to everybody that you would meet in your daily round of activity, whatever your service is as a teacher, a musician, an artist, working in a grocery store, whatever it is, if your desire for being there is to serve others, then that will flow out from you. If you can do what Jesus suggested, love your neighbor as yourself, and see the creator in all things, in all people, then you're on the positive path, and you can travel that path even if there are negative entities in the world, and you can be of service to others in the way that you have chosen beforehand, before this incarnation.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, I want to just follow up a little bit, because so my tradition, I come out of the Jewish tradition, and one of the things my father would always say to me, he'd always say, be a mensch. And, mensch means, like, I always thought it was like, just be good, right? Just be good. He just always tell me, be good. And later on, I learned that mensch means, the real meaning of it means that it's the best of being human. So my whole life, I've had this message to be good, to do good things, to be the best of what it means to be a human being. And I also, have also seen that pull to the negative in myself and in other people. And my question is, why would we make the choice? Why would we as human beings make that choice to polarize to the positive when there's so much attraction to the negative? And even people, as Dustin said, we're in the social justice world, and even people that see themselves as like on the good side and the socially just side still do a lot of separation and a lot of polarizing to the negative, even in the idea that we're doing good things for the world. But there's so much like hate and shutting down and not seeing ourselves and other people. So why would we make the decision to go to the positive when the negative seems so attractive in so many ways in the moment?
Yeah, well, I think it's basically due to pre-incarnative choices, because before the incarnation, we see the overall view of how things work, and that we are part of a unitive creation, that we're all part of each other. We are each other's other self. That's the way Ra described us. So we see that, and we make those choices. And as I said before, our unconscious mind biases the way we see our catalyst, or see the way we interact with people. And hopefully, if we continue to follow those pre-incarnative choices, then that feeling of the subconscious knowing of all the things are part of one becomes more and more conscious. We begin to manifest it in our lives, and our spiritual journeys take on a kind of momentum, and that we feel that there is something more to the world than the normal workaday world, and how everybody seems to be so at odds with each other. And the best that you can hope for is getting a good job, making a lot of money, having a good family, and being well thought of in your community. And then just, taking the day as it comes. But when you become a conscious seeker, which more and more people seem to be doing, then you see that there is more to life than just making the money. You need to open your heart. You need to live in a way like your dad said, be a good person. A lot of people, I think, do that without really knowing right away what they're doing, but eventually it becomes apparent to them that when they do give love, that they are also more likely to receive love, and that their spiritual journey takes on a certain flavor. This is my cat. He likes to be in podcasts.
Nice.
That they like to just have the feeling of love. That the feeling of love flowing through the heart is actually what is the Creator's love that created the universe. That is part of our being. And when we begin to share that love with others around us, there is a kind of a reflection where it comes back. The spiritual journey is something that we get into groups almost. We find ways of getting together with people of like mind. And spiritual communities begin forming around the country, around the world, and getting this overview so that they can see more of the purpose of their life. And eventually, I think it just becomes so much a part of our lives that once you get on the journey, you just have no idea about any way of turning back and getting off of it. Once you become spiritually aware and awake and conscious of this, it just takes on a momentum of its own.
Thank you.
So, Jim, as you were involved with the channeling and the downloading of the raw material, what was the energy like in the room? What was it like for you in that experience?
Well, it was quite inspiring. I don't know if you've heard what it sounded like, what Carla sounded like when she was speaking the words. She wasn't in her body. Ra was using her body to make words, and they were using her vital energy, her energy of mind, body, and spirit. And the words were spoken very slowly, with great articulation of each syllable. And unless you really, I didn't really had a hard time understanding how Don knew exactly what was being said, because when I transcribed the material later, it was hard to figure out exactly where the end of a sentence was and another began, because the words were spoken so articulately and so slowly. So that was one thing was going on. It was, it was obviously something otherworldly. It was not normal at all. And what I would do was to visualize. Ross said that they entered through her crown chakra and then activated her throat chakra, the blue ray of communication, to make the words to answer Don's questions. So I would see this light coming in her crown chakra, going down through all of her other chakras and out through her feet, and then circling up around, so that could help energize the contact and help it progress. And then Don, with his questions, we always tried the night before a session to come up with the questions that were based upon what the previous session produced. So he would start off with some questions that we knew were going to be asked, and then Ra would give an answer that would be so awe-inspiring that he would go off on another tangent to follow the line of thought that Ra had just answered. So it was most inspiring. It was something like it was a mountaintop experience for me. It was like nothing else I've ever shared or experienced in my life.
I can imagine, and it comes through listening to interviews with you, reading the raw materials. What was the impact on Carla post session? I mean, what was her recovery like? How did she seem? What was that like?
Well, for her, right away, it was like going to sleep and waking up, because she was not conscious of anything going on. She was apparently with Ra in the inner planes of Earth in the fifth dimension. So after she would wake up, Don was advised by Ra to call her name before touching her, to be sure she was in her body. And once she responded to her name, then to help her sit up and to rub her shoulders, give her a little bit of a rub there. And we always, there was a chalice of water along with the Bible, a candle, and the incense. And we always blessed the water and then gave it to her to drink. And that kind of got her batteries going again. And after a while, then she was able to go on a walk with me. And she had to do exercises to stay in good shape for the raw contact, and eat a diet that was good for her, foods that would enhance her ability to have a healthy body. And in general, after we learned how to properly perform the ritual of walking the circle and to protect the place with the banishing ritual, it didn't take a toll on her as it did in the first few sessions before we were able to get all of those practices in her use. And
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Because I always, when I've listened to you talk before, I've always tried to put myself in the room and imagine what it was like for you. So thank you for that. Why was meditation so central, or why is meditation so central to the Law of One? And what advice would you say to us? A lot of us that are doing this work, a lot of us that are connected to Soul Focus Group, we do daily meditation. Why is that so important? And what do you see, or what does Ra say is the best way for us to meditate to connect with that intelligent infinity?
well, meditation has always been advised by what's been called the Confederation of Planets in the Service of the Infinite Creator as a means, the best means for advancing the spiritual journey. Because in meditation, we have the opportunity to actually come in contact with the Creator at some level of our consciousness. Carla always says that there are concepts and thoughts that are given to us in meditation that are too deep for words, that words can come from the creator then, but more likely it's going to be some sort of a feeling, an image, or direction, an impulse, an intuition. So if you go into meditation with the desire or the intention of discovering more of yourself as the creator, of letting more of the creator to move through your being in your daily round of activities, then that contact will be made. But again, it's not something you might be intellectually or consciously aware of. The suggestion has always been for the use of meditation is to be able to become infused with some of the energy, the thoughts, the images, the intuition of the creator, so that it can sort of fuel our way through the day, our daily round of activities, and inspire us in ways that perhaps would enhance our spiritual journey of being of service to others and of seeing them as being our other self, and opening hearts more widely for unconditional love. So it's just a way of enhancing the conscious choices we made on our spiritual path by making contact with the creator, who always answers the call for assistance.
Thank you.
So Jim, here's a question that I've had when I started first reading Ra material. Ra would often talk about distortions. Can you explain the concept of distortions and how we can best understand the meaning of Ra in relationship to that notion?
Right. Ra used it not in the pejorative way of ugly and twisted, not in the way most people would see distortion. Distortion is any movement away from complete unity. The first distortion was when intelligent infinity, the one infinite creator, decided that it wanted to know itself. That was the first distortion, called free will. The second distortion was what was called love, or as I said before, the logos, the primal logos. And then that primal logos created many other logoi that created the various galaxies, the infinite number of galaxies in the creation. And by the creator's free will desire to know itself, shining through that love, then light was created and condensed into what we see as the material worlds, the planets, the people upon planets, all of the galaxies. Everything is apparently made out of light. As Don said, photons vibrating at various speeds of rotation and angles of rotation. So that our scientists know that if everything that you have here is made out of photons, and everything is actually more space than it is thing. It's these vibrations of photons that make it what it is. So those are the first three distortions. And all of us have some aspect or some use of distortions that can be seen in a positive way. Whatever distortions we have in the way we see our world around us, in the catalyst that comes our way, can be seen as our own personal, unique way of looking at things, or our distortion as to how we see the world around us. And Ross suggests we are all unique beings. We have much in common, the way we look. We have most of the time 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, nose, mouth, and all that. But we are all unique in the way we look and the way we see things, the way we experience things, and how we proceed on our spiritual journey. So each of us has a kind of distortion or lens through which we look at our lives and everything around us. And by using the catalyst, or how we see things, those distortions can become food for growth and ways that we can learn more about ourselves. Ra gave what was called the balancing process to use that catalyst, so that whatever at the end of the day in your meditation, if you have had anything that was either totally positive or totally negative, anything that moved you off your center of love, that you could recreate that, let it get, relive it in your mind, blow it up, get it big, and then imagine, like if you were very impatient with somebody, or they were impatient with you, then you make that impatience as large as you possibly can. And then you visualize the opposite, which would be patience. And then you let it get just as big. And then you accept yourself for having both of those as a means by which you can know yourself better. And eventually, if you do that throughout the life pattern, you are becoming what the creator is, a 360-degree being. The creator is everybody. And as we see and accept all of this that happens to us as catalysts or distortions, then we become more and more a 360-degree being. We more and more become the creator. So that was what Ra's basic equation was: know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator.
So, Jim, one of the things we talked about when we first got on the call, before we really started recording, was all the violence that's happening in Louisville, that it's happening here in Seattle, it's happening in Florida, it's happening all around the country.
Yeah.
And then all the conflict within our political system that feels in many ways connected to the street level violence we're seeing. Could you speak about your perspective on what we're seeing happening in our society from a Law of One perspective?
Well, it seems like there is the expression, the negative polarity, that is doing what Ross said is at the end of the third density cycle, which we are now in, the end of the 75,000 years of third density, that in the short run, there would be a great deal of this negative expression of polarity that would at some point begin to dissipate. And the positive polarity would be more in effect at some point. However, there would be more people that would be in what Ra called the sinkhole of indifference, not taking a stand or making a choice in either direction. So what we seem to be seeing now is that, I guess the last flashing of the dragon's tail, or something in the Bible to that effect, that the negative polarity is beginning to be more apparent, and that choice is being made. And on the positive side, people are seeing how tragic and traumatic these events are. And there are movements now to make positive choices into the controlling of guns and into how to deal with the trauma of life being taken, and how to try to support the families that are left behind, to have compassion for those who are in deep difficulty and have had such a difficult time losing a loved one or being injured. So there are chances being offered for both polarities now to make themselves more apparent, for the polarization to occur. And the problem in many ways seems to be that there is what Ra called that sinkhole of indifference, where some people just don't seem to be wanting or being able to make a choice to get out of this sinkhole of indifference, because many have come to planet Earth from other third density planets where they did not make the harvest there, and they chose Earth to try to make the harvest again. But once you have not made that harvest, sometimes it's difficult to get on that track of the service to others and to live that life pattern. And Ross suggested that for those, it looks like that's a situation again on Earth, that there will be a small harvest of negative entities, a larger harvest of positive entities, but most of the entities will have to go on to other third density planets to try again to make the choice. Now, they also suggested there is an infinity of time for this choice to be made, and all will eventually make the choice. And eventually, the entire creation, this octave of densities, this 8-octave density, will coalesce, and everything will once again become the one infinite creator. And then the whole process will begin again. And apparently, this has been going on forever and will continue going on forever. Ross suggested all begins and ends in mystery.
Thank you. You're bringing up so much for me right now. I have a question. When you use the terminology harvest, it's one of the things that I think about is the idea of the end of days, and certain people rise to heaven and other people stay on earth in the Christian tradition. Can you speak a little bit more about what you mean when you say harvest, and even that word, I think, might bring up some visceral reaction for people. So if you could just talk a little bit more about what exactly that means.
Yeah, well, another term, and probably one that should be used more frequently than harvest, is graduation. Some people mentioned in the past, well, I don't want to be harvested. I'm not a stalk of corn or grain of wheat.
Exactly.
The graduation, we're in the school of life here in the third density. And the graduation is something that will be accomplished after we drop our bodies and leave the earthly world. Apparently, each of us will have a chance to walk into the light. There are entities from the octave above our own that provide that light. And what it does is evaluate our violet ray energy center, which is the culmination or the identity of ourselves, how our energy centers are balanced, how open our heart is, how the primary energy centers are, so that we can, if we walk into that light and walk as far as we can without the light becoming too glaring, then we may have walked into the fourth density. As we step out of the light, we'll either be at some point in the advanced third density and need to go to another planet to try again for the graduation, or we'll be in some level of the fourth density of love and understanding. And apparently everybody who is able to make that graduation will remain here on planet Earth. It will become a fourth density positive planet. And there are others already here from other third density planets who have made the graduation or the harvest there and are here now in what Ra called the dual activated bodies, the third and the fourth, the heart and the throat bodies. And they're here because they see a great chance of being of service. And the way they see that chance manifesting is the great amount of dissension and separation and difficulty that's going on. They see that as great chances of being of service to others, because there is, that is like a call that goes out to those who have made the harvest and to others who have already made the harvest. And wanderers are those types of entities who come back from the higher densities, that they hear that call. And that call is manifested by all the dissension and difficulty and confusion on planet Earth. And so that's basically how it works, that the graduation is something that's determined by our ability to walk into the light, into the fourth density.
I love that. Thank you. I love that reframing to graduation. It's beautiful. And also I can see, I know enough about religions around the world to know that what you just said should be able to connect with almost every religion has a tradition that matches up to what you just said in one way or another. You said something at the very beginning that really stuck with me. And if you could just talk, and we'll honor your time and we'll close out here in just a minute. But if you could talk a little bit about what is the power of love and light. And it really struck me when you said that you were out of the hippie tradition to make love, or was it make love, not war, right? Is what you said, right? And not just, when I hear make love, not war, I don't hear it literal like making love, but I hear it like putting love into the world. And you reminded me, I'm old enough to remember the hippie days. I was a kid, but I remember, that when there were protests and when there were counter protests and with the police, that the hippie movement led with love. Like, I love you. I may disagree with you, but I love you. And we've lost that. We're now so divided that both sides are like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And it feels like it really struck me in this conversation that we're missing that the people that say that we're about service to others, that we may have fallen into this trap of saying, well, this is the right way to be and you're the wrong way to be. And we stopped sending love to people that we disagree with. I'm wondering if you could just speak on the power of love and light as you understand it through Ra and the Law of One.
Well, Ra said that there was love in every moment. And that was the lesson and the challenge of the third density illusion, to realize there is love in every moment. So I think if we are of a positive nature and want to be of service to others, that we can see that love and feel that love and actually send that love to others around us. And whether they are consciously aware that there is love in every moment, that they do have love in their heart that can be energized by the love we send them, that does seem to be the case. If you can see and feel and send that love to everyone around you in your meditations, And in your daily round of activities, if you can come from a place of love and light, the power of light to create a loving existence, then you are becoming a beacon of light. And you are undoubtedly going to be seen as being very unusual. And yet people at the deepest level, I'm sure, can feel that love. And when you give that, then it is something that is very valuable. And at some level, it does have an effect. The most important level, I think, of course, is the conscious level. And that might take a bit of time for that love that you send to bubble up into the consciousness of the ones around you. But I know it does work. I have next door neighbors that are big Trump fans, and we have conversations on all kinds of things, including politics. And I've discovered that they're willing, once you're able to say, well, you know, I don't really know about that, but I wish that we could see something from another person's point of view. You know, if you could really see them and realize that they're just like you are, that they have their own things, problems to deal with, and we can help each other with it. You know, just like you and I have helped each other. You know, when it's snowing outside, I scoop your walks, and you let me put a drainage dish through your yard so my sump pump could pump the water out. And we've helped each other. I spray the flowers with deer repellent when your wife had surgery on her eyes and couldn't do it. You know, I think on a one-to-one basis, you know, if we could be neighbors with each other, that is something that would be the best way for us to share that love that comes through us, because that love is really everywhere. Once you are aware of that and you try to access it in your own life and to be conscious about it, then I think that you get the feeling that, well, if I can do this, I know others can too, because I'm not any better than they are. I'm the same as they are. Maybe I've got a spiritual path that is conscious and they haven't got one yet, but let's see if we can help them. Let's see what we can do. Let's just share love however we can, whether it's a wave on the street, hi, how are you doing? Or shoveling their walk, or, you know, taking them some food when they aren't able to make their own because they're, you know, fell and got hurt, has happened. So, you know, there are all kinds of ways of doing it. And that's just the whole idea. Find some way to share love, because it's the most powerful force in the universe. And each of us has it in our heart. And all we have to do is to ask the Creator to send it through our heart and out to others, and let it flow.
That's beautiful. And it's a beautiful practice. Jim, we want to just thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and to be a teacher for us in this universal spiritual tradition, and to clarify more what it means for service and self. So we just want to thank you so much for being with us today.
It's been a great honor and pleasure. And I understand that you'd like to do it again in the future, and I'd be very happy to do that if you'd like.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I really look forward to that, because I'm sitting here thinking I have about 283 more questions for you. So.
Well, good.
Yeah. And one of the things I so appreciate, Jim, is that you applied it to what's going on in our world right now, so that it's very real world. And so we'll definitely take you up on that. Again, thank you so much. And we want to thank all of our listeners and all of our viewers for being on this journey with us. Everything we do at the Soul Focus Group is a journey to being of service to others. And we know that in order to do that, we have to get right with ourselves. We have to get in right alignment with ourselves. As we send love to the world, we have to send love to ourselves. So to all of our listeners and our viewers at Soul Focus Radio, we want you to know we love you very much. We care about you. We're so glad you're on this journey with us. We want you to check out everything we do at soulfocusgroup.com. And Jim, do you want to give a plug for anything that you do and any place that they can, our listeners and viewers can visit you?
If you go to our website, www.llresearch.org, all of the material we have ever provided and published over the 50-some years is available for free in the form of PDF downloads. And you're welcome to take as much as you want, and read and learn. And we love you all too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on this journey for us to a new mind. And we ask you, Jim, and we ask all of our listeners to stay safe, stay well, and most of all, please stay soul focused.